Hi everyone, my name is Manal Fayez and you're watching From Scratch. On today's episode of From Scratch, I have a very special guest with me, Chef Gehna. Welcome on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
We're glad that you're here as well. So on today's episode of From Scratch, we're making butter from scratch, and it's super easy, super simple. You may even have the main ingredients in your fridge already. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna grab your cream, and that's literally the only ingredient that you need, and we're gonna put it in our mixer. Chef Gehna, have you ever tried making butter at home?
No, I have never tried it. I'm very curious to see how you're going about it.
It's super easy. You'll see that literally all the work is gonna be done by the mixer itself.
Okay.
All you have to do is just wash it off at the very end. It's super easy.
Any particular cream that you should use?
Yes, so you want to use a cream that is very high in fat. Okay. So our cream that we're going to use today has 35% fat.
Oh, okay.
It contains that much fat in it. So you want to make sure that you have a very good, let's say cream or good quality cream that has that much fat in it.
Right.
So what we're going to do is switch on our mixer and let it go for a long period of time.
Okay. This is just like how you would whip the cream for a cake, right? You're
Yes.
just incorporating air right now.
It is. It's literally the same as whipping up cream. I don't know if you've ever over whipped your cream before. Have you ever done that?
I have, yes.
You created butter.
Okay.
That's actually
All right.
butter without you knowing. When you over whip your cream for a long period of time, what you'll start to notice is your cream is starting to get very granulated, or it has very large granules.
Yeah.
If you keep on going for a longer period of time, what's going to happen is the butter is going to separate from something called the buttermilk.
Right.
And all you have to do is just strain out the buttermilk, and you're going to end up with butter.
I think I'm going to purposely over whip my cream now.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to go on a very high speed. You want to make sure everything is nice and chilled.
Okay.
Our cream just straight away came out of the fridge, so it's nice and cold.
All right.
You may even go a step ahead with cooling down your bowl as well, and this is going to fasten the process a lot. So this is going to get very messy, so what we're going to do is just take one step back, especially when your butter and your buttermilk separate. It's going to get super messy over here. So we're going to keep an eye on this. You might even see some particles flying out. So we're going to use our butter for two different things today. We're going to use them for a savory and a sweet dish. We're going to use our butter to make really delicious brown butter cookies.
Nice.
And we're going to use our brown butter to sear off some scallops, and it's going to be super delicious.
And this is going to be so much healthier than store-bought butter, isn't it? There's no preservatives, there's no artificial flavoring, colors.
Yes, I agree. Butter that is made from scratch, just like this, again, just like you said, does not contain any preservatives. So you need to keep in mind that the shelf life is a little less as compared to store-bought butter.
Well, the mixer's doing the job for me, so I wouldn't mind making it again and again.
Exactly. So as you can notice, it's starting to whip up now. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep it going. Even when the butter separates and you can visibly see it, you want to give it that extra, let's say, minute or two to keep it going, just because you want to make sure that the butter completely separated from that buttermilk. And also making sure that you completely remove that buttermilk content from your butter is really going to extend that shelf life for your butter. So making sure that you squeeze out all of that buttermilk is key.
I noticed you did not put any salt, so this turns into unsalted butter,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yes.
This is an unsalted butter.
Yeah.
Since we are going to be using it to make some cookies,
Right.
that's why I just prevented to add any pinch of salt.
Okay.
If you want to at home, you can go right ahead. And usually salt is added either in this stage, or what you could do is when you're kneading it or
Okay.
squeezing out that liquid, you could add it in and keep on kneading it. But it's very important that you have a very cold environment to do so.
Right.
So right now it has reached that over whipped stage,
True.
but as you can tell, there is no sign of any sort of butter.
Right.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna keep this going, and you're gonna see all of a sudden it's going to completely separate.
Split. All right.
Yes. So what I'm gonna do is just slightly, either what you could do at home is lower down that speed, or what you can do is kind of cover it up with some plastic wrap.
Right.
But just be careful that your plastic wrap doesn't get caught into the whisk
All
itself.
I can see some buttermilk now.
Yes. You could start to hear it as well. It sounds very watery.
Yes.
But we're gonna keep on going. We're not gonna stop at this point.
Okay.
Be very patient. Butter does take a long process,
Okay.
but it's your mixer that's doing all the
True,
work.
true.
So you can really tell now.
Yes.
It's a completely split now.
Yes.
So this is nicely whipped. It has collected all of the edges.
Right.
And as you can tell, it's completely split.
Right.
So what I'm gonna do right now is switch off the machine.
Okay.
I'll just let it go just a little bit further,
You can
actually.
distinctly hear the
Yes,
splashing sound
exactly.
now.
And you can really start to see that butter.
Right.
Right now, it's going to get very crazy, as you
I
can tell.
imagine.
So basically what you're waiting for is for this step to happen,
Right.
where your butter is completely collected in the whisk.
Right.
Didn't I warn you this is gonna get crazy? So we are finally done with churning your butter. So
It looks just like store-bought butter.
exactly. So super easy, super simple. What we have over here is our collected butter. And what you can see over here is the buttermilk. Super easy. So what I'm gonna do is shift down our machine. Bring this right over here. So right into this bowl over here, what we're gonna do is strain out the liquid to collect
Okay.
the buttermilk.
All right.
So please go ahead and do that. And here we have a very delicious buttermilk that we're not gonna throw out. We're gonna reserve it in the chiller and use
Okay.
it whenever we need to.
With the gloves, I'm anticipating it's going to be a messy job.
It is, it's actually not going to be. You know why? Because we're gonna get our hands very nicely cold.
Okay.
And with your hands nicely cold, you won't get any sort of butter stuck onto your hands.
That's a good idea.
It will stick onto your hands if your hands are warm.
Right.
So just be careful. Make sure your hands are nicely submerged in cold water
Okay.
before starting to kind of knead your butter.
All right.
So I'm just gonna remove all of that butter right into our cold water over here. And I have crushed ice at the bottom of my bowl, and I have a sieve placed right over
Okay.
to collect my butter.
Right.
What I'm doing right now is just detaching that butter from our whisk.
So we're using this ice bath basically to solidify the fat in the butter.
Yes, to solidify that fat and to remove any sort of residual buttermilk
Okay.
from the butter. And this process right now is going to determine whether or not your butter is going to stay in your fridge for a longer period of time or not.
Okay.
So the more you can remove that buttermilk from the butter,
Okay.
the more it'll stay in your fridge nice and fresh. What we're going to do right now is submerge our hands in this
Right.
cold water.
Okay.
Feels very nice. It's like a
Yes.
spa.
Yeah. Okay.
And what we're going to do is submerge that butter right into the sieve. And this is very important to do right now, which is to collect all of that butter.
It's turning cloudy, so you know that a lot of buttermilk is still in the butter.
Exactly.
Right.
What you can do is do this over some cold running water. My best technique is always to do this in a bowl with some ice, just to ensure that you got some very cold liquid. At this point, I'm done from submerging it into the liquid. What I am going to do is kind of squeeze it, just like how you see. And the liquid, the cold liquid is there for me to kind of submerge my hands again to get them nice and cold. But all I'm doing right now is kind of pushing that butter, squeezing out any sort of buttermilk. And this is really going to increase or lengthen that shelf life. And we have butter. Isn't this awesome?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So you could go ahead and salt it at this stage, put it back in your whisk over there and salt it and whip it up. You could flavor it at this stage. Your butter is really ready to use. So right after the break, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on our brown butter cookies. Welcome back, everyone. So for your brown butter cookies, what you're gonna need is some butter that you made from scratch. So what I have over here is already melted butter that is almost gonna brown. I wanna show you guys how to brown butter. You're gonna also need some baking soda and a pinch of salt in the same bowl, some chocolate chips, some white sugar, brown sugar, eggs, and all-purpose flour. So I'm just going to continue over here browning my butter while Chef Gehna whisks together the eggs as well as both of the sugars. So browning butter is super easy. All you have to do is just stay constantly on heat and mix it very frequently. You want to make sure that you're mixing frequently because you don't want those butter bits or the brown butter bits to kind of stick at the bottom of your bowl. Super easy. Have you ever made brown butter at home?
I have, yes.
I think every chef has to make brown butter just because it's just up there with packing a lot of flavors, a lot of aromas, to be honest.
And it's so versatile to be used, you know, in savory dishes, in sweets.
Yes, I agree. So what Chef Gehna is doing right now is she's making sure that all of that sugar is nicely combined together with the eggs. And what's happening is that slowly that sugar is starting to melt into the eggs, creating a nice and fluffy texture.
That's true. And you've used two kinds of sugars, the white sugar and the brown sugar. The brown sugar has molasses in them, so that's going to make your cookies soft and chewy. And the white sugar is going to give it nice color as well as it is going to give it the crispy exterior.
Exactly. So with browning butter, you want to be very careful and you always want to be very attentive just because brown butter can tend to burn if you do have it on your heat for a very long period of time. I like more of a darker brown when it comes down to brown butter. So I'm going to keep it on the stovetop over here with the heat switched off to kind of carry on the process.
Oh, it just smells perfect.
It smells wonderful. So I'm using constant movement just like this to kind of cool it down slightly. And how you're going to tell that it's starting to cool down is obviously you're going to feel that it's cooler and also that bubbly substance on the very top is going to disappear.
So until then I'm going to mix our dry ingredients together. So that's the salt and baking powder. This just helps aerate the dough, aerate the flour, as well as my leaveners are completely dispersed in my flour.
So with cookies, you don't really have to sift out your flour.
Right.
Sifting out your flour is going to give you a very nice fluffy end result and also remove any unwanted particles.
Right.
But with cookies, you kind of want that chewy interior,
Very
correct?
true, yes.
So without sifting your flour, you will get that as well.
Right.
So my brown butter is nicely cooled down, and as I said, that white film on the very top is completely gone. So this tells me that it had some time to kind of cool down.
Okay.
What we're going to do is slowly stream this into the eggs. Keep on frying, just like that, yeah. And you want to add this very gradually into your eggs. Some recipes are going to call for you sifting out the butter and removing those brown butter bits.
Right.
For me, that is gold, so do not do that at home.
Very true. Okay.
Perfect. So what we're going to do right now is add in the flour. And we're going to do this in 2 parts.
All right.
And what Chef Gehna right now is doing is she is folding the dough together. And this is a very gentle technique where you ensure that you don't overwork that gluten.
Right.
Before having that flour completely disappear into your dough, what we're going to do is add in those chocolate chips.
Brown butter and chocolate. Perfect.
Exactly, a match made in heaven.
Right.
So what we're going to do right now is portion these into smaller portions. You can chill your dough at this point, and what it will give you is better kind of shapes.
Right.
But for me, it completely works this way, where you can grab out a small portion and kind of give that a quick initial shape. It is going to be very liquidy. Give it that quick initial shape, and what you're going to do is pop it in your fridge or freezer. I would prefer a freezer because it's going to go quite fast. And what it's going to do is give you that nice solidified shape.
Right.
We can reshape it for one more time and then pop it into a preheated oven.
It would be nice to store them, have them stashed in your freezer, and whenever you have a cookie craving, just bake a few and have them.
Exactly. I think, Chef Gehna, you're telling them all of my secrets because I have a stash of cookies at home.
I'm going to raid your refrigerator for the brown butter and cookies.
Yeah, but they're perfect to have at any sort of gathering or even a party. Always have them on hand, and they're really easy to just bake off. And they always taste better after freezing them.
Right. It gets, I think the flour absorbs all this flavor and moisture, and it
Yes.
matures the dough.
Exactly. So I think this is a perfect amount. What we're going to do is we're going to pop these in the freezer to kind of solidify initially. We're going to take them out, give them another shaping, and then bake them off. So we already pulled out our cookie batter, and what we already did was we gave them a nice pre-shaping, just like this.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you get them nice and even in shape. And we kind of divided them all, just because brown butter cookies do tend to kind of spread out quite a lot. So you want to make sure that you spread them out very evenly. What we're going to do finally is garnish with just a touch of sea salt. And this is optional. If you don't like to add some sea salt, I highly recommend it. It tastes really wonderful with the sweet, salty, it's really good. So you're just gonna go in before baking. You wanna garnish with just a touch of salt, just like that. And what's gonna happen, it's going to slowly spread out, and that salt is going to spread out as well.
All right.
All right, so we're gonna pop this into a preheated oven at around 180 to 190 degrees and let it cook. I usually bake my cookies for, let's say 13-ish minutes.
Okay.
Sometimes if the cookies are very big, they bake for around 15 minutes. So these are gonna go in for around 13 minutes. So I think something that's very important for me to add is that your cookie batter needs to stay in the fridge or the freezer for around 1 hour. I think the minimum amount would be 1 hour. I would highly recommend to freeze your cookie dough. And the reason for that is your cookies are gonna get a very nice structure after baking. So I highly recommend that you freeze your cookie dough, pre-shaped, frozen, and then bake it off. So we're gonna wait until this bakes off. After 13 minutes, we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Our cookies are ready to take out of the oven. They are looking very gorgeously brown.
They're like these medallions, right?
They look beautiful. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna set them aside and let them cool down. Okay. It's very important for people to keep in mind that you don't want to move around your cookies. You want to let them cool down because it's going to be very hard to actually remove them from your tray. So what I'm going to do is just set this aside to cool down. And we're going to start working on our second dish of the day using our butter made from scratch. We're going to work on our scallops. For that, what you're going to need is some salt, rosemary, and a lemon, some lemon juice, butter, and scallops. So it's very important for you to keep in mind that with scallops, you're gonna get something called a feet. So you're gonna see that over here. So this is a foot. So the foot is basically the part where your scallop is kind of attached to the actual shell itself. Okay. So this is the foot. This is what it hangs onto it. This is a very tough piece of meat. You don't want to have this in your plate. So what we're going to do is just get rid of that, and we're going to put it right onto our tissue right over here.
It's easily removable.
It's very easily removable, but you always want to make sure that you're cleaning out your scallops and removing these parts, because once these are actually cooked, they do tend to be very tough to eat.
Right.
So this is super easy. All you're doing is just removing that. It is still, I mean, it's not going to give you any sort of food poisoning.
Okay.
But it's just not pleasant to eat.
Right. Okay.
And what we're going to do is grab another piece of tissue paper.
Okay.
And dab off the extra water. And you really want to do this because if you do want to get a very beautiful sear on your scallops, which you should always do, you want to make sure everything is nice and dry.
All right.
With getting any sort of liquid onto your pan, what you're going to do is create some sort of steam.
Right.
So with steam, what happens, it's going to kind of cook down slowly.
Okay.
With scallops, you're cooking them for a very short amount of time. So you want high heat and dry heat as well. And right after, I'm going to add in the oil. And a good trick to keep in mind with oil, to determine if your oil is nice and hot, it should start to move quite faster as compared to now.
All right.
So you'll start to see that the oil is moving faster. It should move even faster than that. Or you could do the very old technique of putting in some water and then waiting for it to splash. Right. That's also gonna work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab your tongs, and as you can tell, the oil is starting to move quite fast.
Yes.
Just like so. What I'm gonna do is add in our scallops, and I'm not going to touch them.
Okay.
And this is going to ensure that they get a very beautiful sear.
Okay.
And once I'm ready to flip to the other side, they should be nice and ready and detach completely from the pan.
So they should cook on high flame throughout?
Okay. Yes, high flame throughout. You don't want to go lower than this because then you may risk overcooking your scallops. And you also don't want to overcrowd your pan. So this is perfect amount.
And that's not a lot of oil as well.
No, not at all. But do keep in mind we are going to add in the butter once we're ready to flip to the other side. Scallops carry a lot of flavor in them. So I'm going to also depend on the flavor of the scallops and season towards the end.
Right.
They're really delicious, so I want to highlight that flavor.
Okay.
So this is also ready to flip to the other side, just like so. So I'm going to go ahead with all of those scallops.
So since they are on the sweeter side naturally, that's why the butter goes very well with them.
Yes, exactly. So nicely seared. And now I have to work quite fast.
Okay.
I'm going to add in a knob of butter. Just like so. And let that melt all the way through. And this is the butter that we made from scratch, so it should pair very beautifully with our scallops. And what I'm going to do is add a stick of rosemary right inside.
It already looks so beautiful. You can just put the pan on the table.
It is. It's very beautiful and very delicious. What I'm going to do is do this thing called basting. And with basting, what you're doing is kind of spooning that liquid right on top of your scallops.
It smells amazing with the rosemary and the butter.
It's really delicious as well. So, right in about half a minute, I'll be ready to switch off the heat. I'm going to add in our lemon juice. And you'll start to see that the scallops are kind of detaching from the pan very easily. If I give them a little nudge, they will detach very easily. So I'm going to switch off the heat and transfer my scallops onto my plate. Isn't this super easy?
It is, it is.
Super easy to make at home. It's very delicious. It packs a lot of flavors. And it's just really wonderful. So super easy. All you're doing is just plating these together.
It's faster than food delivery and so much healthier. I mean,
yes, exactly. These serve as wonderful party snacks as well. You could serve them on, let's say, pieces of bread, and they work perfectly fine as well. They should have a nice pillowy texture to them. If they're a bit too hard, then that means you have overcooked them.
right.
Are you ready to dig in?
Delicious, delicious, yes.
And chef, could you help me with removing those petals and let's garnish it together? I'm going to add a sprinkle of salt. Could go in all around. So easy way to detach all of those petals is kind of to pull them out into your hands. And then I like more of rustic plating, where it goes all around. And I really like rosemary. What we're finally gonna do is just zest in just a little bit of that lemon zest and make sure you do not get any white part onto your plate. And that's because you're gonna just add in a lot of bitterness. And here we have it, our cookies and scallops, all made with a butter made from scratch. Thank you so much, Chef, for being on the show.
I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Same here. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on From Scratch.